Difference between strengthening statements and assumptions. In the earlier videos, we have discussed that in GMAT critical reasoning questions, an argument is presented to you. The argument has a premise and a conclusion, and there is always a gap between the premise and the conclusion. Identifying this gap, what we call the missing link, is key to solving the critical reasoning questions. Now, strengthening statements are those which simply fill the missing link and thereby strengthen the argument. Assumptions also fill the missing link, but they have to be necessarily true for the argument to hold. So assumptions are a subset of strengthening statements. Strengthening statements simply fill the missing link. Assumptions also fill the missing link, but have to be true for the argument to hold. And therefore, strengthening questions are an easier version of assumptions questions. Anything that fills the missing link would strengthen the argument and therefore will be a fine strengthening statement, but not all such strengthening statements are assumptions. Let's understand this better through an example. Here is an argument. The missing link is 15% GDP growth and the conclusion that party has done a good job. It should stay in power. Look at this answer choice. Do you think this works fine as a strengthening statement? By suggesting that GDP growth is an important factor in deciding the performance of a party, yes, this answer choice is filling the missing link. It is a very fine strengthening statement, and yes, it is something which must be true for the argument to hold. If GDP growth were not an important factor, the argument would be void. So this answer choice is a fine assumption as well. Let's take one more example. The same reasoning, the same missing link, a different answer choice. GDP growth is the most important factor in deciding the performance of a party. This is an even stronger strengthening statement, but is it an assumption? This answer is filling the missing link, but this is not something that has to be true for the argument to hold. Even if GDP were not the most important factor, if it were the second most important factor, third most important factor, a very important factor, or simply an important factor, the argument will still make sense. So this answer choice is a very fine strengthening statement, but it is not a valid assumption because this is not something that must be true for the argument to hold. A very important slide. This explains the difference between a strengthening statement and an assumption. The earlier you understand this distinction, the easier your life will be on GMAT critical reasoning questions. One more example. The same argument, the same missing link, a different answer choice. If no previous government led to a GDP growth of more than 10% and the current government has led to a growth of 15%, definitely the gap between 15% GDP growth and the performance is filled and the argument is strengthened. This will work very well as a strengthening statement. However, it is not a fine assumption because it is not something that must be necessarily true for the argument to hold. Even if earlier governments led to a similar or higher GDP growth, the argument may hold. That 15% is the highest ever GDP growth is not a must-be true factor for this argument to hold, and therefore this answer choice, while a very fine strengthening statement, cannot qualify as an assumption. This was the concept, guys. GMAT shorts are deliberately kept brief. For an elaborate explanation, please refer the stage 1 videos. Thanks for watching.